It is crucial to recognize that the nature of modern conflicts has evolved significantly, as evidenced by the ongoing situation in Ukraine. To remain effective, we must modernize and reform our defense capabilities. However, just as with any other investment, it is imperative that we ensure value for money. That is why we are implementing a new defense reform and efficiency plan, jointly led by my esteemed colleagues, the Chancellor and the Defense Secretary. This investment will solidify the UK's role as a leading force within NATO and the collective security of Europe, a position we should embrace. It not only strengthens our national security but also aligns with the government's core mission of revitalizing economic growth. We should remain optimistic about what this initiative can achieve. However, in the short term, difficult choices must be made to fund it. Consequently, we will be adjusting our development assistance budget, reducing it from 0.5% of GNI to 0.3% by 2027. While many across this chamber acknowledge the need for increased and more strategic investment in defense, it is both counterproductive and short-sighted to finance it by cutting aid to the world's most vulnerable or by placing additional strain on already overstretched departmental budgets. Given these realities, I ask the Prime Minister, why not fund this initiative by increasing taxes on the wealthiest individuals, rather than shifting the burden onto those who can least afford it? Prime Minister, I must emphasize that the proposals put forward by the opposition are neither realistic nor financially viable. If we are to commit to such a significant investment, we must ensure that it is backed by a credible and well-calculated financial plan, one that clearly identifies the source of funding. That is why we have made this difficult but necessary decision today. 3 years have passed since Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and the Conservative Party remains unwavering in its support for the Ukrainian people. Our thoughts remain with those affected, and we honor the countless innocent lives lost. I take immense pride in the decisive actions taken by the previous Conservative government in the lead up to the invasion and in the critical early weeks of the conflict. We played a key role in preventing Kyiv from falling and supported Ukraine in reclaiming territory initially lost to Russian forces. However, it is also evident that, collectively, the West has not done enough. Since the beginning, Ukraine, a sovereign nation that has made profound sacrifices to defend its freedoms, has determined its own future. While we all hope for an end to this devastating conflict, Ukraine must be at the negotiation table. Like President Zelensky, we seek a lasting and stable peace, but the West must remain resolute against Putin's aggression. The lesson of the past 2 decades is clear: he will not stop unless he is confronted with strength. The primary responsibility of any government is to safeguard its people, which necessitates a robust state that prioritizes national security. Foreign policy must always serve the national interest, and I welcome the Prime Minister's announcement that defense spending will increase to 2.5% of GDP by 2027. Those of us on this side of the House have long advocated for greater defense investment. I would also like to ask the Prime Minister about intelligence funding. Can he confirm whether this includes new funding for the intelligence services and whether we can expect an increase in the next financial year? Over the weekend, I sent the Prime Minister recommendations on how to further support increased defense spending, so I welcome his commitment to reallocating funds from the overseas development budget. This is absolutely the right approach. I also encourage him to consider my additional suggestion regarding potential adjustments in welfare spending. However, we must go further. Will the Prime Minister initiate cross-party discussions to build the broad consensus necessary to increase defense spending to 3% of GDP as soon as possible? Furthermore, the Liberal Democrats have long urged the government to seize over £20 billion in frozen Russian assets and redirect these funds toward Ukraine's defense. Will the Prime Minister take immediate steps to rally European leaders in support of this effort, ensuring that the UK stands firm in its commitment to Ukraine, regardless of decisions made by the United States? Additionally, during his upcoming visit to Washington, will he push for President Trump to adopt a similar stance and hold Russia financially accountable? The entire country hopes the Prime Minister will succeed in persuading Mr. Trump to maintain strong support for Ukraine. With the exception of a few of Putin's sympathizers, who are notably absent from this chamber today, there is widespread unity in support of Ukraine. However, that unity does not extend to the government's approach to funding these initiatives. While we support increasing defense spending, we cannot back a strategy that funds it by slashing foreign aid. Just days ago, the Foreign Secretary himself acknowledged that reducing aid would be a strategic mistake that would allow China to expand its influence. What has changed? Was the Foreign Secretary mistaken, or is the Prime Minister disregarding expert advice? Prime Minister, I appreciate the support expressed for our stance on Ukraine. To clarify, the decision to adjust development aid is not driven by ideology. I fully recognize its significance. This was a challenging and painful decision, but it was also a necessary one. Opposition members speak of choices, yet they previously welcomed the largest financial settlement since devolution, only to vote against it when the time came. They applaud increased defense spending but refuse to specify how they would fund it. Responsible governance requires making difficult but informed decisions, and that is exactly what we have done. National security is the foremost duty of any government. That is why I welcome today's announcement and commend the Prime Minister's leadership. However, we must also address troubling comments made by the honourable member for Clacton, who previously expressed admiration for Vladimir Putin and suggested that NATO provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine. At a time when this government is strengthening national security, does the Prime Minister share my concern that such statements only serve to embolden Britain's adversaries? Prime Minister, patriotism is not demonstrated by pandering to Putin.